Hello again and welcome. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Sylvie and you're listening to the Vacant Lot Podcast. This is a podcast where I relive and recap some of the greatest moments from the best cartoons I watched growing up. Hey Arnold. And let me just say, it's great to be back. I took a 1-month hiatus to rethink how I wanted to approach the Vacant Lot podcast. I think it was a much needed hiatus to repurpose the formula and the frequency of the episodes. We're now in April and I think I have a more clear vision for the Vacant Lot podcast. I maintain that I still want to upload a show once a month. There may be some occasions, if the news does pick up for the Jungle movie, there may be more occasions where I try to release episodes more frequently than once a month. But at the time being, I think the once a month format is the most suitable way to continue. Before I get started on today's topic, I'd like to touch upon some news of what's been going on since the show's break. I did a little Googling and I've noticed that the other Hey Arnold based podcast, Hey Arnold Hey, the hosts Corey and Vaughn have recently started their second season. That was sometime in March. I think at the time of this current podcast recording, they're now 4 episodes into season 2. I'm a little behind. I've only listened to the Arnold's Valentine episode, but I'm excited to see that they're back. The next little bit of news, this is kind of a minor thing, but to me this was huge because it was totally unexpected. I hadn't really been updating the Facebook or the Twitter page for the Vacant Lot podcast that much. I would post the occasional thing on the Facebook page, and on Twitter, the Twitter site is currently set up to automatically post links to my previous episodes. So while it has been updating, I haven't added anything except the episodes that it posts every 4 hours. It's on like an automatic timer. So I went to check if I had received any notifications on the Twitter page, and I'd gotten the usual likes and retweets from Follow Fridays, from S&M Podcast Show Network hosts, with whom I had done an interview back in February. Since doing that interview, I've been attached to a lot of Follow Fridays and have gotten notifications that way. That's common. I also get the occasional follow from new subscribers to the Twitter page. That's also fairly common. But what caught my eye is one of the likes I received on one of my automatic tweets. It wasn't a particularly important tweet. It was just, I think, I believe it was for the episode for Best Season 3 episodes. It may have been for episodes from season 4 or 5. I don't exactly remember the exact tweet. That's not important. What's important is who had liked the tweet. And I looked, and the name was Maurice LaMarche. If you are a fan of Hey Arnold, you'll know that Maurice LaMarche is the voice talent behind Helga G. Pataki's father, Big Bob Pataki. So my initial thought is like, okay, this is someone posting as Maurice LaMarche, but either it's a fan page or an unofficial page or a gag page. I've been fooled before in another Twitter page. I was tweeting about the upcoming Ready Player One movie, and I had suggested that a certain actor should play the role. And then I believe that actor did respond. And then another tweet had come from someone who I initially thought was Steven Spielberg. I'm like, oh my God, Steven Spielberg responded. But then when I went back and looked at the tweet, it was, one of those pages where it's set up to be Steven Spielberg, but it's not actually Steven Spielberg. So I felt kind of silly. So I went in a little gun shy as soon as I saw Maurice LaMarche. My initial reaction was, yeah, that's probably not the actual Maurice LaMarche. But sure enough, I went to the site and I saw that infamous verification. So yes, it is indeed the Maurice LaMarche that had liked one of my tweets. Now, mind you, it's, like I said, it's not a huge deal because it wasn't like he retweeted one of my tweets or had responded. But the sheer fact that someone who actually worked on the show has acknowledged a tweet from the podcast. I think that makes me feel really good, I should say. I'm hoping that there are other people involved with the show or even involved with the Jungle movie that eventually become aware of the podcast. I don't even know if Maurice LaMarche even listens to the podcast. I'm going to assume no, but it's still nice to get that recognition. So that's what's been going on within the past month. Okay, now that that's out of the way, I'd like to get on with today's topic. So, before I left for the break, I was on this path of doing episodes based on characters from the show. My initial plan was to do, first I did an episode based on Arnold, then I did an episode based on Helga, then I did Gerald. My initial path after that were to do episodes on characters such as Phoebe, Rhonda, Stinky, Harold, a lot of the secondary characters. I wanted to touch upon what I thought were the best episodes for those particular characters. And I wanted to do that up until episode 20, where I wanted to switch gears. Well, I've decided to abandon that track for now. I may revisit the idea of focusing on individual characters and doing a best of list for those characters. But instead, I wanted to shoot to the topic that I wanted to deal with in episode 20. And I think had I kept on the same timeline I was on initially, we probably would be on episode 20 around this month, either now or a few weeks later. I wanted to try something different, so that's why I'm deciding to do this topic now. And this might be a bit of a controversial topic. Obviously, it's apparent that I love the show. It's one of my favorite shows growing up, and I still continue to watch it to this day. I by no means think that Hey Arnold is a perfect show. I think I mentioned in a previous podcast, if I had to choose a Nicktoon that had the perfect run, I have to give it to Rocko's Modern Life. It ended, I believe it ended at the right time, and it didn't overstay its welcome. Some people may argue that the older seasons might be better than newer seasons or vice versa, but I think overall the quality stayed intact for the show, and I think it had the perfect run. Again, I could go off on a tangent on why I don't think having Rocko's Modern Life come back is a good idea, but that's neither here nor there. I love the show Hey Arnold, but just because I'm a fan doesn't mean that I don't have my occasional grievances with some parts of the show. In fact, you could go as far to say I do have episodes that I flat out dislike or hate. So yes, today's show, I will be talking about the episodes of Hey Arnold that I consider to be the worst. These are the episodes that, if you had asked me if you should watch the entire series, these would be the episodes I would tell you to zip through or just outright skip. I don't think they're good. And I feel like this is a topic that's been subtly hinted since I started the Vacant Lot podcast. I've made it known that I don't like the last two seasons of Hey Arnold. Season 4 and season 5 in particular, they're not, to me, they don't reach the same level of quality as the first 3 seasons. You'll probably notice that a lot of the episodes that I include on this list, in fact, all of the episodes that I mention as the worst, the definitive worst, are from the last 2 seasons of Hey Arnold. I tend to classify these episodes that are subpar or quote unquote bad as being in 3 categories. There's the episodes that are an inferior version of an already pretty good episode. So almost like a remake within the actual show of an episode that had aired previously in the show's run. There's episodes that are kind of mean-spirited. They take on a tone that's not the norm for the show. Usually Hey Arnold's a bit kind of optimistic, maybe funny, a little cynical, but there's some downright mean-spirited episodes that kind of rub me the wrong way. And I will touch upon that within this list. And then there's what I like to call the cringe-tastic episodes. They're the episodes that don't really fall into the previous 2 categories of bad episodes, but they're just so bad. There's something about them that they have little to no redeeming qualities, and they're just flat out not good. So I will get into the episodes that are cringe-tastic as we go down the list. So before I start, I think I should stress this now. I've said this in previous episodes, but I wholeheartedly mean this now more than ever. This is just my opinion of what I think are the very worst episodes of Hey Arnold. I may mention an episode on this list that someone out there who listens to this podcast might consider one of their favorites. If that's the case, that's perfectly fine. It's a free country. You're within your right to feel any way you want about the episode if I mention it. In fact, I encourage you, if you disagree with me, to email or to tweet at me. Contact me, please, because if I do mention an episode that you don't agree is bad, or you think it's actually one of the best episodes, I'd love to hear your justification for it, because I'm certainly going to give my justification of why I think said episode is not good. But anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way now. The episodes I list, while I think they're bad, I implore you 100% to please not crucify me, because this is just my opinion as a fan. So without further ado, let's get started. So when I originally made this list, I was determined to keep this list to only 5 of the worst episodes. I did make a preliminary list of episodes immediately that came to my head as bad, and I got close to about 10. Now, I don't think there's 10 bad episodes of Hey Arnold, but there are a few that immediately sprouted in my mind when I made this list. Now, having said that, when I went back and actually watched a lot of these episodes, they didn't seem as awful as I initially remembered. There's some episodes that I wouldn't classify them as my favorite, far from them, but I couldn't justify putting them as the worst Hey Arnold episodes, because they did have some redeeming qualities, as little as they may be. So I'd like to breeze through some of the episodes that I initially thought were bad, but aren't terrible. They're just not high up on my list of watchable episodes. These would be the honorable mentions. So Steely Phil from season 2. That's an episode where Arnold's grandpa joins a Chinese checker tournament to get back at his old rival Robbie Fisher. I was tempted to put this one on the list for the sheer fact that I just find it boring. There's always that episode of a show, no matter how much you like it, it's that type of episode where you kind of gloss over. Like you're not really excited about the plot. You watch it, but maybe your mind's wandering somewhere else. It's just an overall boring, forgettable episode. 2 episodes that come to mind from completely different shows that I have that same opinion of. There's an old season 1 or season 2 episode of Family Guy where a bunch of people from the UK usurp Peter Griffin's bar. And that's the whole plot of the episode. But I don't know, whenever I have that one on box set, I have the volume 1 and volume 2 of Family Guy, and whenever that episode would come on, I'd watch it, but I don't know, my mind would be somewhere else. It just didn't capture my attention. Another episode, I don't know which season, but it's an episode of The Simpsons. It's the one where Homer becomes a country singer, and he becomes close with that female country singer star. I don't even remember her name. I didn't bother to look it up, but that episode always kind of is like, meh. Like, it's not bad. It's not great. It's just okay, to the point it's like not even worth existing. And that's how I feel about Steely Phil. So again, if Grandpa from the show is one of your favorite, if Arnold's grandpa from the show is one of your favorite characters, then this episode would probably be higher on your list. But because Grandpa's not one of my favorite characters, he's a great character. He's always well written. It just doesn't do anything for me. So for that, Steely Phil gets an honorable mention for the sake of just being not memorable. Some other honorable mentions include Beaned. Beaned is from season 5. In the episode Beaned, Helga gets hit by a baseball and she has amnesia temporarily. Arnold feels guilty for causing her to have the amnesia, so he takes care of her and he's really nice to her for the whole day. So when Helga comes to the next day and realizes how nice Arnold was to her, she pretends to still have amnesia for a while longer so she could spend more time with Arnold. My issue with Bean, it's one of those episodes that feel kind of like a lazy retread of some other episodes. Bean feels like a combination of the episodes Weird Cousin and April Fool's Day. By that I mean, in both Weird Cousin and April Fool's Day, Helga somehow cons Arnold into being nice to her so that she can spend more time with him. And this seems to be more commonplace in the later seasons. So my issue with Bean is that I feel, especially April Fool's Day, but both of the other episodes kind of do this plot slightly better than Bean. The fact that we have April Fool's Day, it kind of makes Bean feel unnecessary. We still need Weird Cousin because we need to establish, I guess, that Arnold does in fact have a weird cousin and that it wasn't a dream that he has this country cousin by the name of Arnie. So that episode is mandatory. But yeah, Bean, it's all right, but it's been done better in other episodes. Another episode on the honorable mentions is Deconstructing Arnold. This one initially was a hard, top 5 of my worst. But having watched it again, it's not horrible. But my main complaint with the episode Deconstructing Arnold, sorry, I should backtrack. The plot of Deconstructing Arnold is Arnold's accused of being a goody two-shoes and interfering with everyone's lives and just being flat out annoying. So Arnold eventually says, all right, if you guys don't want my help or advice, I'll keep my mouth shut. And he does so, to the detriment of everyone who told him off, because then they realize they have no one to come to when all their devious plans fall apart. They end up relying on Helga, who gives them really awful advice and ends up exacerbating any problems that they have. The episode, ultimately ends with Arnold deciding to give advice again, and the natural order is restored. My main issue with Deconstructing Arnold, and I know this has been mentioned in previous podcasts, but I don't like the Arnold that's portrayed in the later seasons. It's a different Arnold that we see in seasons 4 and 5 than we do see in seasons 1, 2, and 3. It's the same kind of dilemma I would see with a character like Homer. Again, from The Simpsons. So Homer's character is a well-meaning, kind of bumbling oaf, but he's not an idiot. He's just maybe a bit slow, but he means well, and he's just your normal, average, everyday Joe Sixpack. After the golden age of The Simpsons, his character changed, where he was kind of a caricature of himself, where he was just a flat-out idiot. He was very childlike and loud and obnoxious, but not really in an endearing way, just almost just like in a kind of in the way that begat Peter Griffin from Family Guy. So there was a departure from the character of Homer that was portrayed in the earlier seasons to the type of Homer that was, I guess I should be careful and say, the early 21st century, because to my knowledge The Simpsons are in their 28th season. I don't know how Homer is now. I imagine he's probably more of the same, of that bumbling childlike oaf. But anyway, back to Arnold. So the Arnold that was portrayed in the earlier seasons, he was stoic. He was kind of quiet. He kept to himself. He didn't always go around saying, I don't think that's a good idea. He wasn't like a boo-boo. Yogi Bear's sidekick Boo Boo. He didn't go around always just nagging and telling people to do right. He more or less kept himself, and as I said, there were a lot more segments of him daydreaming in the earlier seasons. That's all scrapped out the window after about season 3. By season 4, which is the season that Deconstructing Arnold is aired, Arnold is just, as Gerald would put it, a Papa Teresa. His only purpose seems to be this perfect golden child that does nothing wrong and essentially chastises everyone else for not having a conscience. And this goes both ways, because he's portrayed as kind of this character who insists on taking the moral high ground. To really emphasize that, they kind of make all the other characters a bit dumb. Not so much dumb, but just incapable of making smart decisions on their own. It kind of takes away from a lot of the characters to make them by default cruel or nasty. And that's how I see the character, especially in Deconstructing Arnold. Basically, a lot of the characters are just doing mean things just for kicks, and they don't look ahead to see the consequences, which is something which I guess would be all right if it was just relegated to this episode. But it seems like everyone around Arnold loses their moral compass, and Arnold has to be there to convince everyone to do the right thing. It's all the students, it's the adults. It's like, if they don't have Arnold there, the characters of the city are totally lost. And this was the first episode where I guess I really noticed that they've changed Arnold's character from the earlier seasons. And, it doesn't help Spencer Klein was doing the voice for him at this point. So it's, again, not a bad episode. It's just really, it just upsets me how the Arnold portrayed in Deconstructing Arnold sets the tone for the remainder of the series. And the last two honorable mentions I want to discuss, they fall in that category of the mean-spirited episode. I'm going to very briefly mention Arnold Betrays Iggy. I know there's a video or two circulating on YouTube that explains why Arnold Betrays Iggy is a bad episode. I have not yet watched it. I'll probably watch it immediately after finishing this podcast because I wanted to give my own opinions on why I thought it was a bad episode. But honestly, I don't think Arnold Betrays Iggy is a bad episode. It's a unique episode in the sense that things aren't wrapped up nicely in the end. I've mentioned before that Hey Arnold is a show where we're not always privy to a happy ending. And Arnold Betrays Iggy is a solid example of an episode where things don't get all patched up nicely in the end. In fact, I think I like it more for the fact that it's not a cut and dry episode. We never get a follow-up to it, which makes it kind of weird. But it basically, I appreciate Arnold Betrays Iggy for the sense that it explains why the character Iggy is such a background character. Like I said, we have characters that almost never get their own episodes and very seldom are the focal point of the episode. We have Nadine, we have Sheena, we have Park, we have Joey. These are all the characters within Arnold's class that we see, but have never had an episode dedicated to themselves. So it's kind of odd to see an episode dedicated to Iggy, but at the same time, that episode simultaneously explains why we never really see too many episodes about Iggy, because there had appeared to be some sort of ongoing grudge that went on throughout the entire season. So I don't want to spoil too much about the episode because I think it's one that actually is worth seeing. But Arnold goes to Iggy's house and sees something he wasn't supposed to see. Somehow Sid and Stinky accidentally guess. Arnold doesn't even tell them, but they guess what Arnold saw. And they blab the word, and Iggy blames Arnold and just gives him the cold shoulder for the remainder of the school year. This goes on until Arnold pleads to Iggy to let him know what he has to do to gain his forgiveness. And, well, not to spoil it, but it's pretty harsh what Iggy makes Arnold do. I guess the only thing I could say against this episode is because we know absolutely nothing about Iggy, except that he wears sunglasses and dresses somewhat similar to Arnold. Because we know so little about him, we basically get his whole character in the span of 2 minutes. At the start of the episode, Arnold is walking with Stinky and Sid while Arnold's on his way to Iggy's apartment. And as they're going, Stinky and Sid basically monologue off what makes Iggy's character so quote-unquote cool. But we're getting this secondhand. We never actually see Iggy do anything. It's just an odd way to start the episode. But I guess we have to establish who the heck Iggy is, because up to that point he has little to no character development. So that would be my only complaint about the episode. I'm going to look up the YouTube video that talks about why this episode's bad, because I'd like to see their reasoning for it. But honestly, I don't think it's bad. It's different, but it's different in a good way. It's different in a way where I think it actually defines what makes Hey Arnold so unique. So it's actually an episode I'd recommend. Now, on the flip side of that, there's another mean-spirited episode that I don't particularly like as well. I almost put as one of the top 5 worst episodes, but it just got edged out by some that were a bit worse. This is season 5's Bag of Money. In Bag of Money, Sid, Gerald, and Arnold find a bag with a large sum of money in it. They decide to return it to the police station the next day, and they leave it in Arnold's hands. Through a bizarre and unlikely mix-up, Arnold loses the bag, and Sid accuses Arnold of stealing the money. So it's basically an episode of Sid following Arnold around, accusing him of being a thief and a liar, and putting ideas in Gerald's head that he's not a good friend, that he's not what he seems, and he's a liar and a traitor. And it just feels like a very depressing episode. It feels like, yeah, it's an episode that tests the strength of Arnold and Gerald's friendship, but having seen the episode, it almost feels like their relationship is more tenuous than it was before the start of the show. I always get that feel. There's a scene halfway through the episode where Arnold calls out Gerald on why he's avoiding him so much. And Arnold flat out asks him if he believes his story on why the money went missing. And Gerald admits not really. And then Arnold says, well, I guess we can't be friends anymore. And I think that's why I had immediately put this episode on the list, because it seems so abrupt for Arnold to just want to end their relationship. But watching it again, you can see the pressure that's mounting on all the three boys regarding this bag of money. And honestly, in real life, if something like this were to happen to someone, I could see how a friendship can crumble, especially for such a large sum of money. My justification for putting it on the list didn't seem quite strong enough. It's not one of my favorite episodes because it just seems like a downer. Like I don't much care for an episode where everyone's accusing Arnold of being a crook. A Sid of all people, too. Sid's known for being kind of high-strung and a paranoid character. So it just further exacerbates the situation. So those are all the episodes that I would consider not great, but not worth being on this list. Here on out, we're going to talk about the stinkers. These are the episodes that I only watched, again, out of sheer obligation to this podcast. I do not like these next 5 episodes. These are what I think are the worst 5 episodes. And I shall repeat one last time, this is just my opinion of what I think are the worst. If you don't like it, fine. Contact me and tell me why, but otherwise, please don't crucify me. I'm just a fan. So, the first episode I want to talk about is Helga's Masquerade. This is a season 4 episode. In Helga's Masquerade, Helga is fed up with Arnold giving all his attention to Lila. She's so desperate at this point to get Arnold's attention that she decides that the only way she can get his attention is if she acts more like the object of his affection, i.e. Lila. So Helga goes to Lila and asks her to teach her how to be more like her. Lila agrees, and she coaches her on how to be nicer, more polite, more feminine. And there's a few stumbling blocks along the way, but eventually Helga excels to the point where Lila's groomed Helga to be her doppelganger. So this is all well and good until I forgot to mention at the start of this episode, Rhonda is giving out invitations to this masquerade party that she's doing. So the episode culminates with Helga going to the party dressed exactly like Lila. I mean, down to the red hair. She wears a red pigtailed wig and looks like a mirror image of Lila. She acts like her. She talks light and daintily like her. It's very eerie. I remember watching the episode just kind of cringing. Like, here's one of those cringy episodes that I can't exactly explain why, but it just did not feel right. And that scene alone, when she goes to the masquerade, she acts as Lila. Everyone else is kind of weirded out. Lila is flattered. And Arnold actually takes the bait, and he spends the majority of the evening with Helga dressed as Lila. So things are going good. It seems Helga's plan is working. But then Arnold makes a fatal mistake of calling Helga Lila, in which case Helga feels really dirty about the whole scenario and decides to go back to being herself. As soon as she does that, the spell is broken and Arnold decides he doesn't want anything else to do with her for the remainder of the night. So they try to cap off this episode at the end with Helga overhearing Arnold say that he liked this new Helga and he wishes that she'd be nice to him, or she'd be nice like that more often. But in this case, the end does not justify the means. Normally you can kind of get a good feeling when Arnold admits traits of Helga that he likes, referring back to Monkey Business. When Helga finds out she's not going to die, she doesn't outright confess to Arnold that she loves him, but she makes that monumental step of saying that she likes Arnold and she thinks that he's okay. In which case, Arnold responds back, "Thanks, Helga. I think you're okay too." And it's nice. You feel a bit satisfied at the end of the episode. But after everything that's gone on leading up to the masquerade scene, it just feels sad. In fact, watching this episode again, I'd have to say this is actually one of the saddest Helga episodes I'd ever seen. I think even more so than Helga on the couch. Yes, I admit it. It's just because you see how poorly everyone treats Helga in comparison to Lila. For example, there's a scene where Helga and Lila are walking together. Stinky's on the playground. He says really blasé like, "Hi, Helga." But as soon as he sees Lila, he's like, "Hello, Miss Lila." And he's really enthusiastic and excited to hear from her and hear her stories. And it's kind of a slap in the face to Helga, who's right there. Stinky obviously has different feelings towards the two women. That said, I just thought of it now. It might have something to do with the Stinky's girlfriend episode, but that's neither here nor there. Another example would be when Helga's getting her lunch. Harold's sitting down and just ribbing on her, saying that she's ugly and that she better not sit next to him or he'll catch her ugly or something like that. And it's mean. I never, watching it again, I realized Helga's life kind of sucks at school. And she's not totally innocent. I suppose in a lot of ways she's brought a lot of this nastiness to herself because all she's portrayed is nastiness towards everyone around her. But it's still, Helga's Masquerade is a very raw episode in the sense that up until the last two seasons of the show, seasons 4 and season 5, we see Helga as kind of a hopeless romantic. And in the first few seasons, it's kind of cute. But then something changes in season 4. And it's almost like we're watching the show from a different lens, where things no longer seem optimistic for Helga. They just seem kind of tragic and sad. And I think Helga's Masquerade is one of the first episodes that show Helga's love for Arnold is a bit debilitating. It's nice to see that Helga wants to change, but she's not even wanting to change for herself. She's wanting to change who she is just to be with Arnold. And that's a really depressing thought. Of the 5 episodes that I will mention, I'd say there's probably the most salvation to be had from Helga's Masquerade. For those people that theorize that Hey Arnold is actually from the perspective of Helga's character, you can make a strong argument for that with Helga's Masquerade, especially since the first few seasons of the show are a bit more idyllic and kind of fantastical, especially when Arnold does his daydreaming. Things seem more surreal and more, more fantastical in the earlier seasons. And then we get into seasons 4 and 5, and the rose-tinted glasses are off, and it's like, this is the world as we see it. Maybe the way Helga perceived Arnold in the first seasons changes, and maybe that's why he seems different from season 1 as opposed to season 4 and season 5. If that's what the creators were going for, in that case, this might be one of the most brilliant episodes of the series. But as it stands, I'm looking at the episode point blank, and I just can't rub the image of Helga's Lila out of my mind. And for that reason, this is one of the worst episodes to me of Hey Arnold. So the next episode I want to talk about is Love and Cheese. Remember the episode Operation Ruthless from season 1? Remember that episode where Helga tries to sabotage Arnold from getting close to his then crush, Ruth P. McDougal? Remember how fun that episode was? Well, the creators decided in season 4 to just take the plot of Operation Ruthless and essentially just cut and paste Lila into the role of Ruth. And that's Love and Cheese. This is one of the episodes that fall within the lazy retread category. It's basically Operation Ruthless, but with Lila. And I have several problems with that. First of all, my immediate thought, maybe I'm thinking way too deep in this, but my immediate thought is, okay, so I always thought the Cheese Festival was annual. So the fact that they're doing another episode where Arnold's going to the Cheese Festival with Lila invites several questions. Did Arnold perhaps go to the festival the year before when he had a crush with Ruth, and then a year later, after his crush was on Lila, decide to go to the same one? Or perhaps the Cheese Festival is actually biannual, and maybe there's one in the spring or one in the autumn. Maybe it's two separate companies putting on the cheese festival. Maybe the founders and creators of the cheese festival split up and now there's two independent cheese festivals because they couldn't see eye to eye. I do apologize. I'm thinking way too much into it, but that's where my mind goes, because we have to assume that Arnold is still in the 4th grade at the time that this episode is aired. So unless the cheese festival takes place in the summer, and perhaps he was just about to start grade 4 when he had the crush on Ruth, and had just finished grade 4 when he took Lila, then even then, well, again, as I said, I'm thinking too far into this, but that's only one of the problems I have with Love and Cheese. The other problem I have is how Helga is portrayed. In Operation Ruthless, she teams up with her best friend Phoebe, or rather I should say Phoebe blindly follows along with Helga in order to see her goals to fruition. So it's kind of almost like a partnership between Helga and Phoebe. They're spending the time together, and I guess they're having fun, but they also have the ulterior motive of sabotaging Ruth and Arnold. In Love and Cheese, that whole subplot's abandoned. Yes, Phoebe's at the cheese festival, but she's gone exclusively with Gerald in this version. So Helga's going at it alone, and it's just different. Helga seems a lot more sinister and a lot more flat out villainous in this version. In fact, a lot of Helga's schemes actually succeed. It's only because Lila's so easygoing and optimistic that her plans don't have the desired effect. But there comes a point where Helga's final act to sabotage Arnold and Lila comes when they take the Tunnel of Love, and Helga disrupts the ride so that they end up going over a waterfall. And Helga's just watching and is amused. Meanwhile, we don't know how deep that water is. By all accounts, Lila could have fell in and drowned and get sucked into a vacuum or what have you. So it's actually kind of sadistic to see that. But it ends as, well, I'm not really spoiling anything if you've seen Operation Ruthless. You already know how it ends. It's just you kind of scratch your head and wonder, is this episode even really necessary? Because we got it with Operation Ruthless. I guess they wanted to modernize the episode. Maybe they thought they could improve it, which honestly, I don't think they did. It actually paints Helga in a much worse light. Or maybe they're just trying to portray how bad Helga has gotten since the first season. So yeah, if you like Operation Ruthless, just stick with Operation Ruthless. This is just it's a carbon copy, and not a very good one at that. So the next episode I want to talk about is Eugene. Eugene is a season 5 episode. PS 118 is conducting a play of the popular Broadway musical Eugene. And Eugene seems like the obvious choice because he's a jinx, and the main character of Eugene is a plucky sort of bad luck but optimistic guy that's just trying to get with his girl Betty. So the character Likelighter makes an appearance in this episode. He's the guy from the school play. And things are going well. Eugene gets the part, but then he realizes that the play's ending has been changed to be from upbeat and happy to down and depressing. When he questions Likelighter about it, he shoots back saying that life isn't all sunshine and unicorns and rainbows, and that sometimes life just hits you with bad luck, and it's not all it's cracked up to be. So Eugene still goes ahead with it because he got the main part and it's one of his favorite Broadway shows, but he's not happy with the direction. But Arnold, who is playing the villain Lawrence, Arnold convinces Eugene to do what he thinks is right. So in the end, they covertly restore the original ending, and yeah, that's Eugene. So what problem do I have with Eugene? Well, Eugene to me is another retread episode in that it combines the theatrical aspect of school play with the musical aspect of What's Opera Arnold. So it combines these two aspects of the episode into its own episode, But it doesn't work. What bothers me about this episode is there's way too much going on. You're essentially borrowing the singing from What's Opera Arnold. You're borrowing the backstage dalliances of school play. But then on top of that, you have this other minor subplot of why Lighter wants to give Eugene a bad ending because his girlfriend left him and he thinks life's unfair. And then on top of that, we have another subplot where Helga decides to sign up for $2 an hour to work as a stagehand. And when she finds out that Arnold ends up getting the girl, i.e. Lila, at the end of the play, she's determined to sabotage the play. So again, they're taking bits and pieces from school play, like Helga's interference, and they're smushing everything together. And in the end, it doesn't work. Or rather, it would have worked a lot better had they made Eugene a full episode. On another side note, I don't like musicals, and that's probably not a fair assessment for something that's 11 minutes long. But it's just an okay episode. And Eugene's an okay character. I don't dislike him as a character. I find a lot of his episodes to be one note because he in himself is a one note character. He's a jinx, he gets hurt, and he says, I'm okay. This and April Fool's Day probably do the most to flesh out his character as more than just a one note gag. And for that, the episode can be applauded. But again, because it's trying to do way too much and it just feels bloated, but at the same time with little substance. So I can't recommend Eugene on that regard. Okay, so the next episode I want to talk about is another retread episode. I'm going to backtrack a bit though and say that seasons 4 and season 5 were definitely guilty of doing a lot of retreading. As I just spoke about Eugene and Love and Cheese. And there's a bunch of other episodes that are a retread of a previous story. In fact, you could argue that a lot of the Helga retrieval episodes are retreads. It's the same plot over and over, just a different item that Helga has to get and destroy. So I think one of the most blatant instances of this retread habit was in seasons 4 and seasons 5, because between the two seasons, they did the exact same plot like 3 times. And they did it 3 times, all with a member of the Johansson family. There was the episode Jamie in Love, where, as I mentioned from the best Gerald episodes, Jamie falls in love with a girl, and it's up to Gerald to convince Jamie that she's not all what she seems. Of the 3 episodes, that's the best. Then we have Gerald versus Jamie, which is Gerald falls in love with a girl who happens to be in love with Jamie, and it causes a rift between the 2 brothers, and they don't really see eye to eye. It's not a really memorable episode, but again, it deals with some sort of unrequited love that makes up the bulk of the plot. Not the best, but not the worst. The third one is the one I want to talk about, and that is the season 5 episode, Timberly Loves Arnold. So if you hadn't already guessed, this time it's the youngest girl, Timberly Johansson, but she falls in love with Gerald's friend, Arnold. So the basic premise of Timberly Loves Arnold is Arnold convinces Gerald to let Timberly go with them for a fun day at the park or just a day out doing stuff. Timberly is so touched by the gesture that she develops feelings for Arnold, and then she proceeds to call him her boyfriend. Mind you, Timberly's like 4, 5, maybe 6 years old. She's still very young, but she considers Arnold the love of her life. She's giving out lemonade and poems at one point dedicated to Arnold. There's one where she writes a poem called He's So Fine or something, which is just kind of corny. But so Arnold gets a little annoyed and was about to set Timberly straight and tell her that he's not her boyfriend when Lila comes along and sees how well the 2 get along, in which case Arnold has the idea to use Timberly in order to spend a lot more time with Lila. And this works for a spell, but despite all the time that they spend together, Lila still doesn't harbor any feelings for Arnold. Arnold feels like there's no use in keeping up the charades, so he sits Timberly down, flat out tells her that he's not her boyfriend and that he was using her. To which case, Arnold gets the best comeuppance when Timberly changes topics, leaves him on the steps, and then at the end says, oh, by the way, you don't have to be my boyfriend anymore if you don't want to. But totally kind of blows him off and kind of that naivety of young children, which is kind of beautiful given just the way Arnold had been treating her the whole time. Unfortunately, Lila hears the whole thing and continues to feel less about Arnold. So, as I said, this is the prime guilty culprit of repeating episodes, and I never really liked this one. I especially don't like the scene where Kimberly sings her poem. It seems like overkill at this point. If they were going to do an episode where someone falls in love with Arnold, could they not pick anyone else? Every single child in the Johansson family has a plot that's ultimately the same. It would have been forgiven if they did the plot, but they changed up the characters. But no, they all had to be in Gerald's family. Why? I don't know. Maybe there was someone who was a fan of the family. I appreciated that they all got their own episodes, but it's disappointing that they all had to be essentially the same thing. Another thing that really bugs me about this episode, Arnold has two loves of his life in the show. It's Ruth and it's Lila. In the first two seasons, Arnold harbors feelings for Ruth up until the episode Arnold's Valentine, in which case Arnold finally realizes what a vapid ditzy airhead Ruth is, and definitively decides at the end of that episode that he no longer harbors feelings for her. So that was a big deal. That was a pivotal point in Arnold's character development, and that was in a holiday episode, no less. In Kimberly Loves Arnold, it's kind of a throwaway line, almost to the point where I had to rewatch it a second time to realize, oh wait, is that it? Are they done? And yeah, there's a moment where Arnold flat out says it's over between me and Lila. So I guess you can interpret that as Arnold finally got over his crush and he's deciding to move on. But it's a bit of a slap in the face. It happens in not a really exciting episode, and it's almost kind of unceremonious. I'm not sure if it's the definitive end of his crush, but if it is, it's a very disappointing and very weak way to do it. So for that reason, I dislike the episode Kimberly Loves Arnold. Okay. So now we're at the episode I think is the worst. This is not a top 10 in order of ascending quality, but I'm telling you right now, the episode I'm about to talk about is my least favorite of the entire series. I dislike this episode. I wouldn't have watched it again unless to get all the information I needed to explain why I do not like this episode. I think I've talked this up enough. Let's go. So, a little preface, a little intro. In the episode I did back in February, I talked about the best Gerald episodes. I talked about the episode Gerald's Secret and what had bugged me about that episode. The episode's title is very vague. You can't really ascertain what the episode's about just by the name Gerald's Secret. It could be anything. I had mentioned in that podcast that my mind wandered to the possibility that this may be an episode about Phoebe and Gerald and how the two of them have a crush on each other. Maybe they were finally going to address that explicitly in the show. As I pointed out, that was not the case. The episode was actually about Gerald being unable to ride a bike. It's still a great episode. As I said, it's one of the best Gerald episodes in the series. So now I want to talk about Phoebe's Little Problem. Phoebe's Little Problem is another episode with a fairly vague title. So when the episode starts, it does start with Phoebe. Arnold has a box of cookies that he got from his grandmother, prune cookies, and Phoebe decides to eat some because she wants that energy or fuel for when she accepts her perfect attendance award. All right. So again, I'm thinking, okay, maybe they knew what they were doing with Gerald's Secret, and maybe Phoebe's Little Problem. Maybe this is the one where we find out that Phoebe has a crush on Gerald. Maybe her problem is she's unable to really express it. Maybe she gets nervous around him. Maybe she's becoming obsessed with thinking about Gerald. I was like, okay, this is it. This is. They knew what they were doing. So I'm already going in with that expectation that maybe this will finally be finally in season 5, they finally address that Phoebe and Gerald have feelings for one another. So about 5 minutes into the episode, Phoebe goes to accept the award and she farts into the mic and she's humiliated. And basically the entire episode from here on out is Phoebe's Little Problem being that she's so mortified and embarrassed for farting in the mic and everyone making fun of her that she never wants to go to school again. So Mr. Simmons has to persuade the class to all go to her house and convince her that what she did wasn't so bad, that everyone farts, and that she should come back to school. And that's the plot of Phoebe's Little Problem. I I have many things that I do not like about this episode. I First of all, I feel Phoebe gets a bad rap towards the end of the series. A lot of her episodes deal with her something kind of catastrophic happening to her. She gets hit by a car. She farts into a mic. Even her appearance in the Hey Arnold movie is really dwarfed. I think there's a scene where she flat out runs into a cameraman or something. It's a little harsh. I have a theory that someone higher up who was pulling the strings for the show had a serious dislike for Phoebe and wanted to eke more of that into the show, because Phoebe did not get a lot of love in the later seasons. Another problem I have with the episode is just it's toilet humor. There's just so much toilet humor, and this was non-existent for most of the series run. I think the first instance of real, like, kind of crude toilet humor was from the episode Roughing It, but it was like a one-off line where Arnold and Gerald complain about Arnold's grandpa eating too many beans, and then there's a fart sound effect. But that was it. That was the only kind of toilet humor for much of the first few seasons. They basically take that fart joke and extrapolate it in Fishing Trip, where Arnold and his friends go out with their dads on a fishing trip and they have nothing but beans to eat. So there's a lot more usage of the fart sound effect there. I was almost tempted to put that episode on my list as worst. But having watched that again, there are quite a few redeemable qualities. First of all, you don't get a lot of episodes with a lot of Arnold's friends' fathers. So we get to see a lot of characters you wouldn't normally see. So that's kind of cool. And also the random kind of non sequitur cameo by former Monkees Davy Jones, and the way Sid's like, look, it's former singing sensation in Monkees Davy Jones. That line always kind of gets me for how contrived, but at the same time how awesome it feels. So I gave Fishing Trip a pass for that. But Phoebe's Little Problem takes the show in a direction that I despised, and would probably be my only justification for being happy that the show didn't go beyond 5 seasons, because if they were just going to add a lot more crude toilet humor into the show, I wasn't having that. That would not have been good. And it's not even just fart jokes. There's like well, heck, I'm going to spoil it because I don't think anyone should see this episode. In the end, Phoebe's finally compelled to come back to school and confront her classmates. And she admits that, yes, she farted. And while everyone laughs, she says, I'm going to live my life. I'm not Phoebe the farter. I'm more than that. I'm going to move on. What do you say? In which case, Harold gets up and he wants to perpetuate the taunt of Phoebe the farter. In which case, he pees his pants and then runs out. And yeah, I just think it's gross. I think it's not a great ending for the show, and it's not a great ending for the series. I think there's an ongoing rumor that Phoebe's Little Problem was probably the last quote unquote new episode that was aired. It may not have been the last one made, but it was one of the last ones. I think it was aired in 2004 or something. I need someone to confirm that. It may not have been the last, but it was definitely one of the last episodes. And if so, that's a horrible way to go out. Like, the episode's not a cliffhanger, nor is it very compelling. It's just bad. I'm really disappointed that an episode like this was even conceived. But my hugest problem with this episode is a straight up slap to the face to anyone who was on the Phoebe Gerald shipping wagon. That twice they do an episode that kind of hints that maybe they're going to address it, and then they hit us with something else. With Gerald's secret, it's fine. Gerald can't ride a bike. That's something we can work with. That's character development. Phoebe's Little Problem? Phoebe farts. No, not good. And to add insult to injury, and I don't know if this is confirmed, I really wish there was some footage or storyboard art or something to confirm this, but apparently Gerald had a scene where he was going to try to convince Phoebe that her farting wasn't a big deal and she should come back. For whatever reason, that scene was scrapped, and it was Arnold that did it. Once again, Arnold the savior comes and has to convince someone that they shouldn't become agoraphobic and hide under their bed because they farted. And again, that also comes into play with Arnold being this moral compass, this character that is the catalyst for people actually having the common sense to make decisions on their own. And it's just, everything culminating to just the crude humor, to the lack of Gerald and Phoebe, to Arnold's character being butchered or relegated to this necessary character that has to be there just for the sake of it's his show. It saddens me. It's unfortunate that the series had to end on such a low note, but yeah, I cannot stress enough how much I dislike the episode Phoebe's Little Problem. I know there's people who say Arnold Betrays Iggy is the worst. No, it's Phoebe's Little Problem. I am adamant on that. Again, if there's any of you out there who love this episode, I want to hear from you. I want you to email me. I want you to tweet me, anything. Leave a long, lengthy post on my Facebook page. I want to hear your justification for Phoebe's Little Problem, because there's no salvaging that. That is the worst episode. Skip it. Don't watch it. Okay, so that's enough naysaying and just negative energy for today's episode. I wanted to try something a little different, so I thought I would do something that you wouldn't really expect from someone who loves the show and just talk about episodes that I actually don't like. And I'm glad I finally did this episode. I was really looking forward to it. I kind of wanted to do it as an April Fool's Day episode, but I'm a little late. But that's fine. I want to get back in the rhythm of doing monthly episodes, and now I think this is a good, strong start. So anyway, I want to thank everyone for listening. If you want to contact me, if you want to rip on me for what I've said about today's worst episodes, you can contact me on vacantlotpodcast.com. You can contact me on Twitter at vacantlot.show. You can email me at thevacantlotpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to subscribe and haven't unsubscribed yet, then please follow me on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Podbean, and on TuneIn. So that is all for today. I thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye. The song you're listening to is the We Are Number One remix by Say Maxwell and Beatrice. You can download the song on iTunes. Be sure to subscribe to Maxwell on YouTube and SoundCloud.